They didn't burn the girl. They buried her voice, but not her eyes. In the hush of winter, 1873, a secret walked silently through the alleys of Milwaukee. 11 years old, pale, silent, watching. Her name, Emma Richter, was never meant to survive the archives. She was the child anomaly science couldn't explain, and the ghost history tried to forget. But she saw too much. She remembered everything. Conversations, crimes, thoughts not spoken aloud, secrets never meant to be unearthed. Emma didn't just defy logic, she violated it. They thought she was divine, or cursed. But the truth is darker. Emma was a mirror no one wanted to face. She didn't learn, she knew. Patterns, numbers, sins buried under the cobblestones. The townspeople whispered it. That girl isn't normal. But behind closed doors their fear grew teeth. Because when Emma spoke, things died. Men, reputations, order. It was more than memory. She revealed the system behind the illusion, and systems do not forgive. We begin here, in the shadow of her silence. Not to recount a legend, but to decode the forbidden. To trace the outline of the invisible leash placed around your mind, and what happens when it snaps. You were taught history as a sequence of progress, but it's always been control disguised as order. Institutions don't raise children like Emma. They erase them. Her story is a fracture in the lie, a rift through which the forbidden light bleeds. This isn't entertainment. They said she was gifted. This is confrontation. But Emma Richter didn't just have a memory. As we descend together, understand this. She had sight. Each step forward is a step away from the man you were. That bordered on the prophetic. Your thoughts are not your own. She didn't Your guess. Memory was designed. She didn't theorize. But her mind was uncaged. She knew. And that made
Numbers
her dangerous.
Weren't math to her. They were language.
Are you ready to fall?
One that whispered secrets from
because
behind
once
the
you
veil
understand
of
what they did to
she
her,
could tell you how many
you'll start to
steps
see
from your
what they're
bedroom
doing to
the
you.
well, how
Stay
many cracks
close.
lined your kitchen floor. She would blink and recite the exact number of crows that passed overhead on the third Thursday of last autumn, not because she cared, but because the pattern demanded it. At first, it was unsettling. Then it became impossible to ignore. The old butcher, Herr Klempt, laughed at her once, called her a Fräulein Calculator. Days later he was dead, his throat slit in his own shop. Emma didn't kill him, but she had told him calmly that 7 drops of blood would fall between his doorstep and his scale. It had happened exactly as she said, and the townspeople remembered. They started locking their doors. But Emma didn't need doors. She needed only a glance. Here's what they didn't understand, and what you haven't been told. The brain doesn't operate in isolation. Your thoughts, your instincts, your choices, they are reflections of deeper codes. Social programming, generational trauma, institutional grooming. And Emma, born outside the mold, could see the code. She told her priest, people's lies are wrapped around their words like old string. She told her mother, the mayor's house smells like blood when no one's home. She told her teacher, the numbers on the chalkboard don't add up because the school is hiding something. And she was right. Again, and again, and again. You've been taught to dismiss intuition, conditioned to obey expertise, distracted, entertained, tranquilized with meaningless noise. But the mind that sees the structure behind ill, illusion, that's the threat. That's what they bury. Not because of fear, but because of power. Emma didn't fear them. She pitied them, because once you see the machine, really see it, you realize the guards were never outside the gate. They've always been inside your head. You've been taught to look away. But you're not here to look away anymore. You're here to remember what they forced you to forget. When Emma vanished in the spring of 1873, she didn't leave behind a body. No grave, no blood, just a journal. It was leather-bound, weather-worn, and cold to the touch, as if it rejected warmth. No name, no title, just a single symbol etched into the front cover, a spiral made of 7 intersecting lines. Geometry that didn't belong to this age. Inside, pages and pages of numbers. Some were simple, Fibonacci sequences, prime integers. Others defied pattern until you looked deeper. Not as arithmetic, but architecture. Blueprints, coordinates, ciphers, maps to something beneath. The sheriff called it nonsense. The priest called it evil. The doctor said it was the result of a fevered mind. But those who stared long enough began to feel watched. Not by her, but by something else. Something that didn't want this knowledge back in the world. And for good reason. You see, Emma wasn't documenting things. She was decoding reality itself. The journal wasn't a diary. It was a mirror, one that revealed the psychological scaffolding behind civilization, the subtle cues, the reward-punishment systems, the trauma loops passed down like family heirlooms. She wasn't writing thoughts. She was transcribing the hidden instructions that shape your every choice without you realizing it. Ever wonder why some memories feel planted? Why certain fears don't belong to you but still own you? It's because your inner world isn't private. It's curated by systems older than governments, older than nations, by forces that understood the mind before psychology ever existed. Emma cracked it, and she wrote it down. But no one could bear to read it. The journal passed from hand to hand. Scholars, code breakers, occultists. Many went mad. A few disappeared. One scrawled the same phrase on his walls before vanishing. The girl knew the key, but the key was never for us. You feel it too, don't you? That pull in your chest, that dissonance between what you were told and what you sense is true. It's not paranoia. It's awakening. The journal isn't lost. It's buried in a vault of memory that lives inside you, and the spiral on its cover. It's not decoration. It's a map, and it leads somewhere you've already been. You just don't remember yet. Most people speak in sentences. Emma listened in systems. She heard the sub-language that hides beneath everyday speech, the embedded commands, the unconscious cues, the fear-shaped grammar that's been passed down through generations like invisible shackles. Not words, weapons. When your teacher told you to behave, what they really said was, conform or be discarded. When your boss praised your teamwork, the true message was, your value ends where your obedience begins. When your pastor told you God sees all, what he meant was, shame is surveillance you carry in your own head. Emma knew. She saw that everything we call civilized runs on compliance programming, not by accident, but by design, a silent curriculum buried in ritual, reward, punishment, and language. The town of Milwaukee wasn't afraid of her abilities. They were afraid of what she was unraveling. When she spoke, they felt exposed, not because she accused them, but because she revealed what they'd hidden even from themselves. Secrets no man wants to face. The baker's son who touched his sister. The mayor's bribes buried under church tithes. The priest's nightly whispers, heard only by the altar boy he thought was asleep. She spoke nothing but truth, and the truth made them violent, because truth, raw, unfiltered truth, destroys illusions. Emma's greatest crime wasn't her knowledge. It was her refusal to play the game, to nod, to lie, to pretend. And in a world built on layers of pretending, that's worse than evil. It's uncivilized. Because society doesn't fear monsters, it fears clarity. That's why they erased her, not just to stop her voice, but to preserve the dream, the controlled dream you were born into, the one that taught you obedience is virtue,
that suffering makes you holy, and that doubt is a weakness, not a warning. But now you know, and you can't unhear this. You're beginning to see the edges of your own cage, the one built from phrases like, "That's just the way things are." Don't ask questions. It's for your own good. Lies. All of them. And now, your ears are tuning to the real frequency, the one Emma lived on. It's not language. It's liberation. But it comes at a price. The same price she paid. They call it society, but that's not what it is. It's a machine, precise, ancient, and surgical, not made of gears or wires, but rituals, institutions, and belief. A machine designed not to kill you, but to tame you, to file your mind down to something predictable, something safe. Emma Richter didn't just escape the machine. She saw it. And once you see the mechanism, you realize there is no freedom inside it. Only roles: citizen, student, consumer, believer, worker, patriot. Every title is a chain. Every expectation is a script. And from the moment you're born, the machine starts writing you in. Emma never fit. Not because she was broken, but because she was intact. Her mind hadn't been processed, hadn't been fractured by guilt, domesticated by shame, or hypnotized by ceremony. She was wild code. That terrified them. Because every system fears the one who remembers what came before the programming. You want to know how control works? It's not violence. That's the last resort. The real control is in the school bell that trains you to divide your life into blocks of obedience, in the pledge you recite without understanding, in the tests that measure compliance, not intelligence, in the history books written by the victors, soaked in silence. Control is ritual enforced by fear and sweetened with reward. They don't need to watch you. You'll watch yourself. And if you step out of line, they won't punish you. Your peers will. Emma didn't fear punishment. She feared becoming one of them. So she wrote it down. Page after page of how the machine disguises itself as morality, tradition, culture. How it speaks through faces wearing smiles, hands offering gifts. She saw that control is not enforced. It's internalized. And once you digest the cage, you'll defend it like it's part of you. But here's the fracture. You're beginning to spit it back. Up. Right now, as you hear this, your programming is glitching. The rituals don't feel sacred anymore. The voices that guided you now feel hollow. That's not confusion. That's deprogramming. That's you returning. But the machine doesn't take kindly to broken parts. And once it sees you waking up, it will come for you. They didn't just lose Emma Richter. They erased her. Newspapers printed her name once, then never again. No missing posters, no investigation, no reward, just absence. As if the earth itself had swallowed her to protect a secret older than the town she exposed. But erasure is never random. It's a protocol, an ancient method deployed by every power structure throughout history when something or someone slips through the cracks in the illusion. Not to silence them, but to make it so they never existed at all. It's happened before. The Library of Alexandria wasn't destroyed by accident. The Cathars weren't just heretics. They were threats to centralized control. Nikola Tesla's notes didn't vanish. They were taken. And how many other Emmas never made it into the footnotes of your textbooks? You see, the system has always had one prime directive: protect the architecture of obedience. And when someone cracks that code, when someone threatens to ignite conscious disobedience, they don't kill the body. They erase the symbol. Because symbols are dangerous. They don't just tell stories. They reshape identity. Emma's mind didn't just see systems. It threatened to awaken others, And that is the true heresy. In a world where everyone's asleep, the one who wakes up is marked. Her journal went missing. Her family was relocated. Records falsified. Birth certificate voided. Death certificate? Never issued. The spiral etched into her journal was scratched off. That's not disappearance. That's surgical deletion. And if they did it then, they're doing it now. Not with fire, but with narrative. Rewriting timelines, sanitizing memory, feeding you palatable fictions while scrubbing out the inconvenient ones. If a person cannot be found in the archives, did they exist? If a truth isn't allowed to be spoken, does it die? No. It hides in the minds of the few who refuse to forget, like you. But memory alone isn't resistance. You must speak what they've buried. You must embody what they've outlawed. So if you've made it this far, comment now and write it twice to lock it in. I remember the spiral. Say it. Let the system know you're awake. Because the next section takes us beneath the system. Most people believe power is held by presidents, kings, CEOs. But those are masks, projections, puppets dancing on the strings of something deeper, beneath the governments, beneath the wars, beneath the laws and their false gods. There are architects. Not human, not entirely, not creatures of flesh, but of agenda. Their currency is belief, their weapon is story, their fortress is consent, and you've been giving it since the moment you could speak. Emma found their fingerprints, buried in the numbers, encoded in church hymns, hidden inside school pledges, echoed in the rhythms of safe routines. Breakfast at 8, work at 9, die by 70. They don't force you into submission. They design you into it. And the more free you think you are, the deeper their hold. She traced it in symbols that predated language. 7 lines, interwoven. A spiral not of chaos, but of intention. Every point led to a core. Identity manipulation. That's the architect's masterpiece. Convince a man to become his own jailer, and you never need bars again. You think you choose your clothes, your career, your God? No. You were given options and told those were choices. You were sold narratives and told they were truths. You were programmed to defend the cage because you feared the unknown more than you loved your own freedom. But Emma had no such fear, because she remembered what you've forgotten. You were not made to obey. You were made to see. The architects don't kill to maintain control. They suppress frequency. Truth has a resonance, a vibration that awakens. They smother it beneath entertainment, fear cycles, emotional trauma loops, and addiction. Emma's spiral disrupted that frequency net. And for a moment, the veil shimmered. That couldn't be allowed. So she vanished. But the spiral survives, in the minds of the few who remember, and in you, if you choose it. Rime, but what you wrote twice. I remember the spiral. Good. Because we go deeper now. Not into the mind of Emma Richter, but into your own. The next layer of the machine isn't built around you. It's built within you. This part, they will never teach you. Because if you understand this, the machine collapses. The most powerful form of control is not physical. It is not political. It is psychological architecture, a prison so intimate, so invasive, it speaks in your own voice. That prison is you. They built it early, when you were a child, through rules masked as love, through punishments disguised as guidance, through silence that taught you which truths were not allowed to exist. And over time, you began to shape yourself to survive, not to thrive, to comply. You stopped asking. You stopped screaming. You stopped seeing. You were rewarded for shrinking, for fitting in, for betraying your raw, wild mind in exchange for permission to belong. And now, you sit inside a fortress of habits that were never yours to begin with. You call them normal. You call them safe. But they're bars made from fear of being misunderstood, shame about wanting more, guilt over anger, doubt trained into your instincts. Emma saw it in everyone around her. They looked alive, but they were echo chambers, reciting rules they didn't write, defending systems that broke them, teaching children how to forget because they had already forgotten. But Emma? She never built the inner prison. She never let the lie take root. And that's what made her unstoppable. You wonder why you feel tired after telling the truth, why your chest tightens before you speak your mind, why you sabotage your own freedom and call it being realistic. It's not weakness. It's conditioning. And now, you're standing at the door of your own cage, key in hand. It shakes, doesn't it? That feeling, that tremor in your gut right now. That's the machine realizing you found the lock. Let it tremble. Let the voices scream. Because what you're about to do? Unforgivable. You're going to choose yourself. And once you do, the architecture collapses. Not all at once, but brick by brick, ritual by ritual. And then you'll see what Emma saw. You were never trapped. You were just taught not to leave. What is power? Not authority, not wealth, not domination. Real power is sovereignty, the unshakable, unsteered state where no voice, religious, political, parental, or institutional, commands your inner compass. Emma found the equation, and it broke the world around her. It wasn't written in Latin or Greek or biblical verses. It came to her in numbers, clean, precise, relentless. She called it the silent ratio. A formula she repeated over and over in her journal, written between drawings of spirals, broken crosses, and maps of stars no one could name. It went like this. Belief. Origin equals control. If you hold a belief, but don't know where it came from, you are already controlled. Let that sit in your gut, because most of what you believe is borrowed, handed down like hand-me-down clothes, worn by generations, stained with fear, never questioned. And worst of all, you defend them, because that's how power works, not by force, but by getting you to protect your own cage. Emma saw it play out in every home. A man who beat his son, calling it discipline. A woman who silenced her daughter, calling it protection. A town that buried its corruption, calling it tradition. The equation never lied. Every belief without origin is a leash. And every man defending that leash is convinced he's free. The architects knew it. That's why origin is always the first casualty of empire. Burn the old texts, demonize the old tongues, rewrite the myths, ban the sacred plants, silence the symbols, erase the origin, and the belief becomes a tool. Emma's equation was not theory. It was a mirror. And once she showed it to others, they felt it. Something inside them, ancient and silent, woke up. They cried. They screamed. Some fled. Because waking up isn't light. It's fire. And the first thing that burns is everything you were told to be. This is the line now. Reach down, it here. You know what you believe, but do you know where it came from? Because if you don't, you are not the author of your life. You're just the vessel. But here's the truth. Emma Richter bled for. You can rewrite the equation. And when you do, nothing owns you ever again. You were never meant to remember. Not the spiral, not the ratio, not the voice in your bones that pulses when something is wrong, even when everything looks normal. That voice is blood memory. It is older than your name, older than your nation, older than language itself. It's the hum beneath the hum, the part of you that flinches before a lie is spoken, the instinct that recoils before betrayal wears a smile. Emma awakened it, and that was her true crime. Because blood memory isn't stored in your mind. It lives in your nervous system, your cellular rhythms, your generational code. You don't read it, you feel it. And once triggered, it begins to uncoil like a serpent made of light and shadow, hissing a single, ancient truth. You are not who they told you to be. You are not weak, not broken, not lost. You've been edited, trimmed, softened, sanitized by generations of psychological warfare. Not with guns, with stories, with shame, with lies wrapped in morality and fed to children as gospel. Emma didn't just see the machine. She called to the part of others that remembered life before it, before control, before guilt, before systems taught you to tie your worth to productivity, obedience, and external validation. She read someone once, a man beaten by his father and still calling it tough love. She touched his hand, looked into his eyes and whispered, "The pain isn't yours. It's inherited, but you're still letting it live through you." He collapsed. Not from her words, but from the weight of everything he'd buried to survive. That's blood memory. The stuff the therapists can't reach. The programming that rituals can't wash away. The part of you that carries ancestral knowledge and ancestral wounds. Emma activated it. And that's why the architects moved fast. Because blood memory is contagious. Once one man remembers, he becomes a fire. And fire doesn't ask permission. Now it's your turn. You're not just watching this. You're remembering. That twitch in your chest right now, that heat rising behind your eyes, that's the signal. That's the old you waking up, and when the blood remembers, the machine starts to bleed. His is the part they fear the most. Not rebellion, not riots, not noise. They fear the moment a man goes quiet and stops believing. Because collapse doesn't begin in the streets. It begins in the psyche, when the inner scaffolding, the conditioned reflexes, the false morality, the invisible contracts, begin to crack under the weight of one impossible truth. None of this is real, unless I agree to it. You were trained to serve systems that don't serve you. You were trained to kneel to symbols that harvest your energy and give you nothing but guilt in return. You were trained to feel pride when you're empty and shame when you're full. But what happens when the training stops working? Emma knew. She wrote it in her final decoded entry, tucked into the binding of her journal, too faded to read until the right light hit it. Collapse is not destruction. It's reclamation. It doesn't look like chaos. It looks like a man standing still while the world screams at him to kneel. It looks like a boy choosing silence over apology, a mind choosing clarity over comfort. The real collapse isn't loud. It's when you walk away from their rules and nothing in you flinches, and that collapse is contagious. One awakened man destabilizes 10 asleep ones. He asks forbidden questions. He radiates the energy of refusal. He no longer carries the weight of inherited fear. Emma's mind ignited that collapse. Her disappearance wasn't exile, it was containment. To make sure her vibration didn't ripple outward, to make sure her spiral didn't replicate. But now, you've heard her story. You felt the fracture and the spiral. It's inside you now. They cannot stop this. Because this is not revolution. This is deletion of obedience at the root. And when enough men do that, the system shatters from within. You no longer belong to their narrative. You are becoming the kind of man they wrote laws to prevent, the kind of mind they built empires to bury. Emma didn't vanish. She passed the fire forward, and now it's burning in your hands. You've come this far, 13 layers deep into the forbidden, past the myth, beyond the lie, through blood, silence, code, and fire. Now you stand at the threshold of the unwritten world, and here's the final truth. There is no going back. Emma Richter was never a girl lost to history. She was the warning that never reached you in time. She was the spark they buried in shadow, praying no one would ever breathe life back into it. But now you have. You breathed. You remembered. And that makes you lethal to the lie. Because men like you, who descend willingly, who let go of the mask, who rip out the conditioning by the root, become something the machine cannot calculate. You become sovereign. That doesn't mean rage. It doesn't mean violence. It means presence. Uncompromised, uncorrupted, uncontrollable. You're not here to revolt. You're here to become the thing they swore no man would ever be again, a mind that remembers, a soul that cannot be programmed, a voice that speaks without permission. You are not a follower of Emma Richter's story. You are its continuation. The spiral is not a symbol of fear. It is a map to self-origin. It begins at the edge of illusion and coils inward, layer by layer, until only truth remains. And here you are, at the center. The girl they couldn't explain. She wasn't meant to be understood. She was meant to be felt, so deeply, so violently, that it broke the chains inside you. And it has. So now, speak it again. Comment the phrase, "I remember the spiral," one more time. Let the signal echo. Let the algorithm choke on your refusal. Let the architects know another has awakened. Another code has collapsed. Another man walks free, not in the world's eyes, but in his own. Welcome to the silence beneath the system. Welcome to the storm after forgetting. You're not who you were, and they can never unmake you now. And